We're here with County Commissioner Garrison Ortiz from, of course, Pueblo County, who is done such tremendous work for the county in the last few years as he's served here, but he's also a member of the Action 22 board. And as you've heard from so many of our county commissioners today, we wanted to add Garrison's voice. It's been such a big influence for the entire region. And one of the things that Garrison does a very good job of is he recognizes that the impacts that happen here in Pueblo ripple to the entire region. So we're not acting in a silo. So this has been a really crazy week on a whole lot of fronts. We were happy to hear, of course, that they took the higher ed out of the bill, out of the collective bargaining bill. But that means the full force of this is going to now lay on counties. How is this going to affect Pueblo County?
Yes, it sure has been a crazy week, certainly. I do sit on the Community College Systems Board for the state and am pretty involved with our local community college and university. So, yeah, it was a slight breath of fresh air that higher education was pulled out of the bill. However, we had kind of a double whammy, or I did at least, at the county as well. So we're still very, very much concerned about the bill getting through in its current form as it affects counties. A lot of my colleagues across the state, various county commissioners have reached out to not just get perspective, but to really organize and ensure that the dramatic fiscal impact that this would have to all county budgets and the consequences of that to the services we're able to give to our citizens is heard loud and clear.
So we're asking this of all of our county commissioners. What has your involvement been in the stakeholder process as far as this goes? How much input were you asked? What your thoughts were? How's that been?
Well, there really hasn't been any. The only thing we were able to do was really to, through CCI, we were asked to prepare an analysis of what the fiscal impact would be of this bill that would be passed. And I can tell you it would be absolutely devastating. The number is a little bit over $14 million in just the first year alone. There would be many implications from additional staff and FTEs to salaries, wages, and those sorts of things. When you're dealing with a number, we cut budgets all day long, but $14 million a year, $15 million a year on year one in perpetuity to start in a lurch in January is pretty drastic, pretty dramatic.
And one point that one of the commissioners made too is that's just the minimal cost.
Exactly.
That's not factoring in other things that could happen on top of that as well, correct?
That's correct. I mean, those are estimates. I mean, I think a lot of folks are being a little bit conservative in their estimates of what we do know. But I think what's really disheartening, at least for me as the chairman of our board, is Commissioner Griego coming into his new role a little bit over a year ago. We were certainly always looking to see what we could do to make Pueblo County a better place to work. Mm-hmm. But, Commissioner Griego was very aggressive in wanting to push for higher wage rates and better benefits in working at Pueblo County, and certainly commend him, and our board jumped on that. And this past year, there were 1 to 2 different bonuses that were given. Pueblo County awarded recognition pay for all of its employees countywide. Mm-hmm. It also had hazard pay on top of that for law enforcement as well. In addition, we rewarded our workforce with a 10% raise across the board.
Wow.
So a double-digit raise, bonuses. So this was the biggest we're coming off one of the biggest compensation years in Pueblo County's history in literally over decades. I cannot recall the last time that was done. And that's done for many reasons. One, that's to rightfully reward a great workforce that we have, but also it's to compete with the private sector as well for workers. And the other thing, too, is we've made a really concerted effort with a lot of employee input to really receive feedback on how we can, the other things from a non-monetary standpoint that we can do to make our county an ideal place to work. So we're doing a lot of different things when it comes to employee recognition. For example, we do on-the-spot recognition with commissioner coins that are worth $100 and a day off, and we really have a good culture in the county moving in the right direction. And we do have some unions within Pueblo County government as well that we work exceptionally well with, and I think are quite reasonable, and we just have a good professional working relationship with. So I think just at least from Pueblo County's perspective, other than what it does from how it just devastates and levels our budget, I think it really is frustrating because we've made a really great effort to make Pueblo County a place to work, and we've been very successful with that.
So that's amazing to hear. It's got to feel a little bit like an insult.
It's certainly tough to deal with. I think what worries us the most at the county is, like I said, I mean, when you're cutting well above $10-15 million in 1 year in a lurch, I mean, that we certainly don't want to be alarming, but there's only so much that you can cut from the budget. I mean, the first thing you look at are non-mandated services. We do a lot when it comes to community support. Mm-hmm. So when you look at all the various capital projects and nonprofits, not just through CSAC, if what we did through CSAC alone was it, that certainly would not nearly be enough to the level of support we give. So the impact isn't just going to be felt by Pueblo County employees and Pueblo County government. It will certainly have a compounding effect when you look at the funding that we will no longer be able to provide to a lot of community partners as well. That does include the city and Pueblo West Metro District,
right,
and nonprofits and those sorts of things, because when you're really struggling to make ends meet, you start with non-mandated services. And in addition to that, I don't even know that'll be enough. It's interesting, but the workforce could unfortunately be adversely impacted and affected. The only way to cut to those numbers that cut into bone is really to really dramatically change the composition of your workforce.
Yeah.
Well, that would mean a huge layoff. In the opposite direction you want to go, we heard from Kevin Grantham this morning that one of his biggest concerns was the human services that they would have that Fremont County would be forced to cut. I mean, they run really very, very lean, and so he's bothered by a complete disregard for those kinds of impacts that they do. What would that look like for Pueblo County?
We're a workforce of approximately 1,200 employees. We certainly have a very large workforce. I almost feel like the bigger the workforce, the more of a fiscal impact it looks to have.
Right.
In my experience at the county over the past several years, and certainly in finances, as you know, Sarah, is an area that I have been very keen on when it comes to the county. So I don't say this lightly, but absolutely. I mean, furloughs, decreasing our workforce, dramatically eliminating positions. Those are things that will have to be on the table.
So you've worked so hard over the last few years, not only to clean up, but increase transparency, be able to move forward on restructuring debt, all of that you've done.
That's correct.
There's no pork in your budget, is there?
No. I mean, I think we have a very when we go through our budgeting process, we are certainly accountable for how we use people's money. I mean, we have introduced a lot of internal financial controls. We have tightened up quite a bit. I mean, just short of going to a zero-based budget.
Right.
For those that do budgeting, how tough that is. But I mean, we put out a lot of money to the community as county government. I think if you really look at it as a whole in Pueblo, when you look at the budget of the Metro District, the city of Pueblo, and others, Pueblo County by far has one of the largest budgets in the community. We have a $200+ million a year budget. A lot of that money, other than workforce, does go to support other community efforts and other community organizations. We have, as you know from my discussion about the Jill and Joe Martinez Boulevard projects, we're looking to do over $180 million in capital projects this year. This is going to be the largest capital program that the county has ever seen. Take into account 20 capital improvement projects that include the expansion of the Riverwalk, Recreation Center on the Mesa, Runyon Field. I could go on, but the largesse of county government in terms of our budget and who we serve, when we have when we level our budget like this will do, those effects will not just be felt by county commissioners in the Budget and Finance Office. Yeah. It will be felt by the entire community.
And I was just going to say that's important because, Pueblo is a nonprofit town. Like we have 1 million nonprofits here that are doing really good work, and they rely on the county for a lot of their funding and support.
Right. That's right.
And if you just, the one beautiful thing about Pueblo is if you need help, you can find it here. Mm-hmm. And this will completely impact that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you are not just an economic driver in the amount of people that you employ, but in those services, but also the other things that would draw that in. All that would go away.
I mean, we're going to have a really hard time with this. In my role as commissioner, one of the things when I look at our workforce that has really humbled me is when we give our awards of service. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some of those awards when I came in were 5, 10, 50. I just received my 5-year pin and going on my 6th year as a county employee as well. But when you look at how long some of these folks have worked and dedicated themselves to serving this community, I was just with an employee in Pueblo West now, 41 years.
Yeah.
41 years.
Wow.
We gave an award to Tootsie Wilhite. That was the longest I've ever seen. I believe it was 50 years, 50 or 51 years. So
she's worked for the county?
That's right. And so when you have employees that have worked here for decades, certainly longer than I've been around, I think what worries me is that people don't work for an entity like that if they don't love where they work.
Yeah. It's a very good point.
And what I worry about a lot, especially in an environment where we are competing as hard as we can to attain employees, to bring in new employees as vacancies open up. I have 200+ vacancies right now in our workforce. If you take resources away and you start chopping departments in halves or in thirds, to make all of this work, you're not going to have less work to do. You're going to have the same amount and growing workloads with less resources to do so. And I think who loses when that happens is, of course, the communities we talked about, but it's also the employees themselves, which was the spirit of this bill and who this bill is intending to help, that really lose out and I think do not have a better workplace because of the bill. So,
and not that you can read anybody else's mind, but especially you, your colleague in Commissioner Greco, who's been such a great advocate for labor and for unions, because that's who he is. And every discussion, he makes sure that that's a priority. I guess one is, how is he feeling about this? Has he said anything? And I don't want you to speak on his behalf, but at some point he's had to have said something about what he thinks about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Commissioner Griego, lifelong union member, has brought a great perspective to our board when it comes to workforce, employees, and how we reward good work as a board. But he is, along with all 3 commissioners, he's just as concerned as I. He certainly is a major advocate of of increasing wages and benefits and so forth, but yeah, he has the exact same concerns that I've shared with you here today, and I say that with a lot of confidence. And I think what he told me the other day is that, it's not that the county per se isn't interested in hearing employees' input or interested in even having unions, because we have unions today,
right?
In county government that we've worked with for years and worked very well with. I think it's just to him, as he put it to me, you just have to be practical. You have to understand how county government works. You have to understand what these impacts will be. There might even be a way to modify the bill in a way such that it doesn't absolutely level our budgets. But I don't know that is, falling on reasonable ears at this time.
Yeah. Reasonable ears is a good one. One last question before we go. Brian brought this up earlier in our board meeting today. And by the way, we took a very aggressive oppose on this, and we're going to be doing everything we can to help get this bill killed if it does, in fact, get introduced. One of the things that Brian brought up was this idea of what happens when the county clerk's office strikes? Like if they were to go on strike right during an election? I mean, I think
what if the sheriff's office strikes?
That was my second one.
And you don't have detention deputies in the jail or officers out on the streets. That's not a county government I'm proud of as a commissioner or a citizen. So you're absolutely right. Other than the financial impacts, the ability for us to provide services and clear snow and a lot of these services that are provided, folks don't realize until they're not provided, until they're not there. There's one other thing I want to be sure I cover before we conclude. It's that, a lot of people say when they look at these various county budgets and they say they're hundreds of millions of dollars, from county to county. Yeah. Well, you can eat and realign, $15-20 million of that budget because you're $200 million entity essentially. Right. Mm-hmm. But it is not that simple. If it were that simple, I don't know what the need for county commissioners and elected officials and budget and finance staff of our size would really need to exist for. Mm-hmm. As you guys well know, there are so many things that have to be held in reserve and money that flows in that is for specific purposes. If you look at the projects, the capital projects I mentioned, those revenue sources cannot be used for personnel. Right. Majority of those are allocated through ballot measures. They're tied to capital projects. They have a lot of restrictions. So, when I mention the overall size of county budgets, and other commissioners do as well, folks have to understand how incredibly complex and how constrained those resources are year in and year out already.
And that's not a bad thing. There needs to be a really strict designation of funds, and that's because that's what serves the taxpayers to do that. That's not something that is not a bad thing, but that doesn't mean that you get to just decide
that's correct.
Out of hand.
That's absolutely correct, and I think I don't care Democrat or Republican. It's an overall consensus that all citizens want you to use their tax-paying monies in a responsible way. They want you to be accountable. Right. That's why those monies are attached to specific purposes for specific things, and that's why government leaders work so hard to free up funds for projects and initiatives that they want to see better their community. And sometimes, as I can tell you, in terms of the jail on Joe Martinez Boulevard, those take years.
Yes.
Those take years in the making. So.
And to be able to have to pivot so quickly on this.
That's correct.
It would be, January 1st of 23?
That's right.
I think is what's in the bill currently. Yeah. So, well, Garrison, thank you so much. And for all the great work that you do. You hear it a lot, and I know you hear it a lot from us for sure, but as I think about who's actually serving and would have to carry this burden, I get a little protective and a little angry about putting this on the people that serve in our communities. I think it comes from an unfair place of that you're not doing your job, but I want you to know that we appreciate and we see what you do and the burden that you carry. And I'm angry that we would even consider adding any kind of burden to our local leaders on this. But thank you so much for all the great work that you do.
Well, we appreciate all of your support and your advocacy, and just really proud to be a member of your team, and appreciate your support on this one.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thanks, Garrison. Oh, thanks, Tony, for joining us. This is such an important issue, and we're worried about it, and I know that you are too. I want to make sure everybody knows Tony is not only on the executive board for Action 22, but he is Los Animas County Commissioner. He is an ag producer himself, and he's a beef producer, and they've been really involved in. You and Connie are just totally. You guys are the picture of what rural is and looks like for the entire state. But so this bill that we're talking about that's supposed to be getting introduced sometime today, we're hearing, is a collective bargaining, and it's for counties. And we're going to hear from a lot of your a lot of your compadres, a lot of your county commissioners from around the state that are Action 22 people as well today. But I wanted to visit with you a little bit about what you're feeling about this bill.
And also, before we start, Tony is also a county commissioner.
Did I say? I forgot to say he's a county commissioner. I said all these really great things. Yeah, he's the Los Animas County Commissioner, and
I'm a jack of all trades guy and master of none. And we're if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we try to be everywhere.
No, that's so true. And you came on Action 22 board a couple of years ago, and since then you and I have gotten to be really good friends. You and Connie and I, and we've all gotten to be really good friends, and we're all we're all in this fight together. But this one's an interesting one. It would force. So this bill is collective bargaining. It would force the counties to adopt collective bargaining statewide.
Yeah, and first of all, I got to say that Los Animas County is unionized, but there's a caveat in our contract that says that there would be no strikes, that the union that we have here in Los Animas County could not strike and basically hold the county hostage, and because they realized how essential the services that we provide to our community is, and this collective bargaining bill would remove that. And I could see, and it says it in the bill that they could strike. And I'm looking at small counties like Phillips County or Sedgwick County, or some of those counties that are small, and those services are essential to those counties that and their communities, that this would be devastating to those small counties, because it's a mandate. It's not a choice. That's probably what rubs me the wrong way is it's no longer to unionize and to go to the bargaining table. It's no longer a choice that those individuals and those unions can do and sit down at the table and come to an agreement that would work amicably for all involved. Now, this would make it mandatory. And to me, that's unconstitutional. To kill locally generated dollars and which would effectively kill those local programs that are essential, like DHS, our sheriff's department. This is just a bad bill.
So there's already provisions in Colorado for counties or local governments to allow unionize. They allows them to do that. So that's already there. They can already do it if they want to.
Yeah, it's a choice. It's a matter of choice.
So this bill, what it would do is say you have to do this, right?
Right. And here's another thing. Why are county workers and counties, why are we being singled out? They met with a lot of pressure from the state public colleges and university leaders, and they came out in force and they opposed it, and now they're exempt. So why are counties not held to the same standard?
That's a great question. We don't understand it at all. So you guys have already been through the process of unionizing in your county it was a smart thing to keep that strike provision out. So let me ask you, why did you feel that was important to keep the strike provision out?
Well, we didn't do it. I mean, it was done many years ago by commissioners that were much smarter than I, and they could see the writing on the wall and knew that, this is what would happen. For instance, if that provision hadn't been put in there, and they could have struck, say, during a blizzard, the Road and Bridge Department, they would effectively been holding the county hostage, the community hostage, and they could see that wasn't going to work. And the unions, we're not against unions. I mean, the unions have a valuable place in for what they do for our workers, but I lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. Just that strike provision. That's a real sticking point, I think, for essential services. And Brian, we were having a discussion about this earlier, and you brought up the part about elections and county clerk's office. I thought was really important.
Yeah,
yes, that was.
It's not to be totally doom and gloom on it, but as we know, a lot of stuff is politically minded right now. And say you have an election and the county clerk's office wants to go on strike.
Right.
And that could interrupt the election and democratic process in a county. And I'm talking from both sides. I'm not saying one party or over the other. And it's just a possibility. And I'm looking for the bad in it, like I said, trying not to be too doom and gloom, but it is a possibility.
Yeah. And it would be, it would certainly enable some shadier, non so good people to weaponize the election process, and I think that's something that everybody's really trying hard to protect. So, Tony, just to finish up, we did have an Action 22 board meeting this morning. You're the vice chair, and you ran that board meeting, and we had a really robust conversation about this. Talk a little bit about some of the other comments we heard, and then what we decided on.
Yeah, so it was robust. That's the correct word. This is nonpartisan. This should be a nonpartisan concern, and Action 22 being a nonpartisan group, we had conversations from both entities, the Reds and the Blues, that were in opposition to this, and they gave multiple reasons why. Some of them we've already mentioned. And the Action 22 arrived at a opposed position with was it in its entirety, Sarah?
It was in its entirety. Yeah. There was nothing about this. The positive parts of this bill are already they're already in place.
Right.
And I think that was a really loud and clear that if they're able to do it, and like Los Animas County, if they're able to do it in a productive way that actually serves both employees and the community, they have the option to do that already. Anything else in this bill would be redundant, I think. And then the things that we don't like about this bill would be economically devastating. So yeah, we're opposing it, and it's a difficult thing. I think that's the other part that we'll talk about with some of of the other commissioners that we're going to be visiting with today. I think the big thing that concerned me was the lack of stakeholder input, especially with you guys are going to have to carry the water on this, and there wasn't adequate. If there was, it was inadequate as far as that stakeholder process. So you guys would have to deliver on it, and you aren't going to be able to weigh in on.
Well, and these unfunded mandates for a lot of smaller counties, when the unfunded mandates come down, especially to our little agriculture communities, they'll be hit hard. I mean, with inflation at its current levels and climbing, they can't afford any more unfunded mandates or this collective bargaining. I mean, we would be looking at employee layoffs. I say I mean small rural counties would be looking at employee layoffs, and those would have to occur to hire specialized union HRs and county attorneys, along with the training of non-union supervisors and how to manage a union environment. I mean, all of those would be huge concerns for small communities. And that means that they would have to lower those essential services to our communities like DHS and those programs.
Well, I know that these smaller counties are just rolling in money right now, right? They have so much money, they don't know what to do with it, right?
Right.
Yeah. And it's going to keep on rolling in, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's and you know what? God bless you guys for doing the hard work, because here in the next week or 10 days, you're going to see an onslaught of bills that are going to be dropped in your lap, and it really angers me that we're not going to be able to effectively weed out the bad ones when you get a ton of them that land in your lap and you have to take positions on those. So God bless you guys for taking the hard stance.
Thanks, Tony. All right, we'll talk to you soon, and we're going to have several other interviews with county commissioners from around the Action 22 area. But we appreciate you, Tony, and everything that you do for our communities.
Super, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Tony.
Bye.
So we're sitting here with County Commissioner for Fremont County and former Senate President Kevin Grantham. And then, of course, Commissioner Grantham is also on the Action 22 Board of Directors. So you already have heard on this particular episode from other county commissioners with regard to the bill that's going to be introduced today. We understand that is or would force collective bargaining onto all the counties in Colorado. So, Kevin, can you give us just a little bit of background? You're a recovering legislator, so you know everybody here. You know Colorado fiscal policy. You know what can and can't. I mean, how many years were you president of the Senate?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. So, and I tell people it takes 2 years of being in the thick of things to get Colorado fiscal policy figured out. So tell me, how you heard about that this bill was going to be just about the counties.
Oh, well, when did I first hear about that?
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't even really official until this morning, and it's even technically not official yet.
Right, because it hasn't been officially introduced, right?
Right, and it may be introduced even as late as tomorrow, as far as we know. And it still has a potential of not being introduced. As long as it's not introduced yet, then we still have a chance for it to be killed prior to that.
Right.
But it's always been in the rumor mill that we were always the end target for this. And so, it's been bantied about, I guess, for the last month or so that we may end up with just counties. And even as recent as yesterday, I think even as I was talking to you yesterday, the colleges, the universities, higher ed finally got removed from the latest draft. And, I made the point this morning because a reporter asked, about all of these other entities, including municipalities and higher ed and others that were part of the original bill and the ongoing drafts, and then miraculously disappeared from consideration. It begs the question, why? Why were they in there to begin with? Why did they get left out? It begs the question, if it's not a good deal for them, why is it a good deal for the county? The reality is they all got out because they pressured the unions and the bill sponsors to let them off the hook, because it would cost them a catastrophic amount of money that they just simply don't have. Higher ed, I'm sure, made that case, and kudos to them for getting themselves excluded. But it begs the question, if it's expensive for them, it's going to be expensive for us. So why do it at all? We'll wait and probably hear crickets on waiting for the answer for that. But I think it's an important question to be asked and answered, that if it's good enough for us, it's good enough for everybody. If it's bad enough for everybody else, it's bad enough for us too.
So
does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense.
Yeah,
and we're right on task with you on that one. I think the other thing I was interested in learning from you is a great concern I've had about not just this bill, but a lot of other bills that are happening right now with regard to the stakeholder process. So as Senate President, you did a good job of driving that home. I remember there was a number of times that you said if the stakeholder process didn't fit your what you thought it should happen, you weren't going to let it move forward. And so that the buck stopped there with you. What would you rate the stakeholder process on this particular bill with regards to their communication with counties?
Well, it probably doesn't register on the process-o-meter. At least as far as collective bargaining goes, there has been zero stakeholder involvement and process with the counties. We are shouting from the outside to the inside on this one, and we're not being heard so far. And you've watched and you've witnessed the ones that have gotten themselves excluded from the bill being in the same position and doing the shouting, and then finally being heard. And now we're the ones left holding the bag. So again, kudos to them for being able to get out, but nobody was in on this. This was written from the lofty heights, the ivory towers of union-dominated, smoke-filled back rooms. Gotcha.
So for Fremont County, and we heard from Tony Haas, we've heard from Commissioner Stan VanderWerf, who was with us a few minutes ago. We're going to hear from Bill Canda a little bit later, and then we're also going to hear from Garrison Ortiz out of Pueblo. What's it going to cost Fremont County?
Well, that's a great question. We're looking right now with 358 current employees in Fremont County. And given our current budget and the current pay structure, we're looking at a potential of a $6 to $9 million hit. That's a potential hit. Mm-hmm. And if that happens in a county of the size of Fremont, then we are looking at basically a loss of upwards of a quarter of our workforce in the county. And when you lose a quarter of the workforce in a county, you're looking at the potential for loss of more than a quarter of the services being provided. We'll see a snowball effect when that happens. When we start talking about cutting $6 to $9 million in services and payroll, we're talking about increased response times. We're talking about fewer patrols. We're talking about roads that aren't getting graded. We're talking about roads that aren't getting plowed. We're talking about loss of services in Department of Health, Department of Human Services. Human Services. This is the one function of government maybe except for grading roads at the county level, the human services is the one function of government this Republican can wholeheartedly get behind and say that is the one place where government is intervening to help children who are being mistreated, abused, and this is going to directly affect our ability to help those children. And folks that put those kids in harm's way should honestly be ashamed of themselves, because this is where this is going to lead to. I don't want to be too alarmist on this stuff, but it frightens me knowing the jeopardy that we will be putting people in with these kind of cuts that we're going to have to make if collective bargaining goes through.
One of the commissioners we just had on mentioned that if they just put their entire road and bridge budget towards this, it wouldn't even be half of the cost. That's how impactful it is.
Right. And I think we're probably close to the same position. We could probably spread it across, but it's going to negatively affect every department. Mm-hmm. And who does that negatively affect? It negatively affects the taxpayers and the citizens of the community, because they're the ones that rely on those services. We look at long lines at the motor vehicles department at the clerk's office in Fremont County. Those lines will not get shorter with this. There will be fewer people sitting at those desks. There will be fewer hours that people will be able to access those services within the building. Across the board, that's the more retail aspect of what we have going on in county government at the motor vehicles. Excuse me. But this will obviously drastically affect everything across the board.
So one last question for you before we let you go. And I know that you're up there right now making some noise about it. And if there's any important movement, you'll let us know. What's been the tone? I guess I'm asking the bipartisan question. There are other county commissioners up there with you. Is it just Republicans that are making a loud noise about this, or is it Republican and Democrat county commissioners?
It's both. And so there is a bipartisan coalition, because the kind of cost that this will impose upon counties doesn't affect just Republican counties. Mm-hmm. This affects every county. And the Democrat counties, especially the Democrat mountain counties or the Democrat front range counties, recognize this. Now, when I say they recognize it, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all on board with us trying to kill it. There are some that like the idea of forced unionization, and so they are on the side of taking away that element of control and local control from rural counties. Be that as it may, there's still only, I think, 2 counties that have collective bargaining across the board in the state of Colorado out of 64. So 62 counties have not chosen to go down that path, but now the state legislature wants to make it mandatory for everybody since they haven't made the right choice.
And Los Animas County is one of those two that already there. So we heard from Tony Haas earlier, and he said that the key thing about that is that there was a no strike provision, so they can't strike on that. And it happened years and years and years ago, but this would provide for the ability for these essential workers to strike, correct?
Well, it's we're still waiting to see what the final version is that they introduce when it comes to the no strike clause, because the most recent version did have some elements of a no strike provision, which would be helpful. But I don't understand all the nuances to it, to be perfectly honest, guys. So we're going to have to wait and see on what that is in what is actually introduced, because it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be from what I understand. We actually, if we're going to turn an awful bill into just a slightly less awful bill, we need a no strike provision. The one that is in there doesn't do it, actually, and is not what is not what would be needed. We would still rather see no bill than the current bill.
Yep, absolutely. So you weren't able to be on the board call this morning, but we just wanted to let you know that we had a very intense, robust conversation, and the decision was made to, even though we don't take position until it's introduced, we vehemently oppose this once it is introduced. So
in any form.
In any form.
Yeah.
In any form.
Right.
So
Good.
we didn't do the amendment provision or anything like that we would normally do. But Action 22 is gonna. We've got as much as we can do to have our county commissioners back on this one, because we know it's not good. There's nothing redeemable about this bill so far that we've seen.
Well, I appreciate that, and all the counties certainly do as well. And this will be a very fast-moving process, like it always happens at the end of the session every year. They could introduce this today or tomorrow, and it could be in committee as soon as Monday.
Yeah.
So
I'll be up there on Monday for sure. If it's in committee on Monday, I'll be up there for sure. We're going to try to get this voice, especially because of the lack of the stakeholder process. We're going to try to utilize this. So we appreciate you taking the time with us. Please say hello to Mike Beasley while you're up there for us, and I'm sure I'm going to be talking to him a little bit later. And today,
I did do that. I ran into him this morning, and so that was a good run-in.
He's a big fan of yours.
Oh, we've worked together for a long time.
Yep. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So we are here with Commissioner for El Paso County, Stan VanderWerf. He is also, he sits on a number of committees and different seats he has around the state, but he's one of the most vocal and prominent county commissioners in Colorado, and we also have the pleasure of having him on the Action 22 Board of Directors. And so we had, as you've heard in some of the other interviews that we're giving, we're wanting to talk a little bit more, take a little bit deeper dive on the bill that we understand is going to be introduced today that would force counties to start implementing collective bargaining. Collective bargaining. So thanks so much for coming down. You came all the way down from Colorado Springs.
I did.
Just to do that. We appreciate you doing that because we wanted to get this message out in a big hurry. And of course, it's that important to you.
Well, thank you very much for having me here, and I want to express my appreciation for the Action 22 team for an opportunity to speak to the residents and the citizens of Colorado and anybody else that's willing to listen.
Absolutely.
And we definitely have a challenge here in the state of Colorado with regard to this bill that looks like it's going to be introduced today with regard to collective bargaining.
Right.
And that's forced unionization. That is not permissive unionization based on local issues that would force every county in Colorado to unionize.
So, of course, there is provisions for. That's already in place. If a local government, if a county, they can do that now, right?
That's exactly right. We actually have a few counties. It's a very small number that have unionized already. But that really should be a local choice based on the specific conditions of a local area. And it should not be imposed by the state government on everybody because unionization doesn't necessarily work everywhere in the state.
So I wanted to ask you, one of the things that bothers me about this bill was the lack of stakeholder input. So as far as you're concerned, how did you get to know about this bill?
Well, we have a legislative team in El Paso County that alerts all of us, including the county commissioners, about things that may be coming before the legislature. So we've known about the possibility of this bill for some time, maybe about a month or so, but it had not yet been introduced. And I do find it ironic that it's being introduced at the very end of the legislative session, which actually limits the ability for public input and also agency input from around the state. And I believe that was done on purpose to try to limit that input. And that speaks to your question about stakeholdering.
Right.
In absolute clear terms, in my mind, I do not believe sufficient stakeholdering has taken place on this bill.
So I haven't gotten into this with other people, but I realized last night as I was talking about this with my mom, of course, she didn't really understand what stakeholder process was, or she didn't understand what was meant by that. So it made me think that not your average citizen even knows what that means, or why we're so stressed about the fact that didn't happen here.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very important. I mean, before the state imposes legislation, a typical process is stakeholdering, and what that means is that citizens and also agencies that might have an interest in a particular bill have an opportunity to speak at length with the legislators that are considering a piece of legislation. I can tell you that I do not believe that the county commissioners and the counties have had much of an opportunity to do that stakeholdering, and that in many respects is where this bill is directed. And, it's going to cost an enormous amount of money for all of the counties, and I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that.
I was just going to ask you, what is the biggest concern you have? And I know the answer is how much it's actually going to cost. So would you take a dive? Now, because we have listeners all over the country, of course, Colorado, all over the country, and then we have listenership all over the world, actually, through Voice America Network. Would you just give a quick little, the size and El Paso County and who they are? Just will you talk a little bit about your county before you get into that?
So El Paso County is the largest county in the state of Colorado by population at 737,000 people. It's actually larger than Denver County. The city of Colorado Springs is embedded within El Paso County. When we've done a very careful cost analysis of what this bill would cost the taxpayers of El Paso County. And this is just El Paso County alone. The way the bill as presently written, it has a fairly expensive overhead set of provisions that are required. And then also it would cost us a lot of money in increased salaries. So between those two, we're looking at a $25 million per year cost, possibly much higher, but at least $25 million.
At minimum, it would be $25 million.
At minimum, it would be $25 million. And that's based on scientific studies that we did research on about, when a public agency unionizes, what ultimately happens to their labor costs.
So in a state, most people are aware in Colorado what Tabor is, but in a Tabor state with the Colorado fiscal policy the way it is, what is that going to mean for your budget?
Right, I appreciate that very much. So it's very much of a squeeze that's very, very difficult. And I do want to mention that, just in El Paso County, a $25 million bill, but when you take into account 64 counties in Colorado, you're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars that would have to be diverted away from services that local government provides to its citizens today. And we do so much in that arena that many people maybe don't really think much about, but we pave all of our local roads. We fix potholes. We plow roads when there's snow in the winter. We run parks. Our sheriff's office is funded with our budget. And so this $25 million that would have to be devoted to this bill, if it passes, would have to be diverted from other programs because we run a pretty lean county.
Yeah.
We just don't have $25 million lying around.
Well, and because of Colorado fiscal policy, you can neither raise taxes to cover this, nor can you go into debt to cover this, correct?
So in order to raise taxes, we have to take that to a vote of the citizens and ask their permission to raise taxes. But just last year, we asked for permission to reset our Tabor limit. That's a complicated thing in the state of Colorado, and the voters in El Paso County turns that down.
Yeah.
So what it would likely happen is this would force us to do something, to cut services or ask for a tax increase. To ask for a tax increase, we'd have to go to a vote of the citizens, and they're already not interested in their taxes being larger. And why would we do that at this point in time when people are still trying to recover from COVID? We've got many business owners that threw their life savings into their restaurants and other companies in order to survive through COVID. And now we would be faced with a tax increase. That's just not acceptable.
Yeah.
And then the voters would have the right to turn it down. So if we were to go through that, ask for a tax increase, the voters turn it down, then we can't increase the revenues from our citizens. And this bill takes $25 million out of our general revenue fund. And that means we have to cut something else. There's no other option at that point.
And, and that's something that, Tony Haas, commissioner from Los Animas County, got into. What he brought up was like, you're not going to cut fire. You're not going to cut safety, correct? So you're going to go to more of the social net side of things. And in a time after the pandemic where people are unemployed, having a hard time finding a house, where do you cut? Would it be social services? Would it be these agencies that are just going to hurt people more in the long run?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's even more complicated than just that, because we have a Department of Human Services in El Paso County. We have 600 people in there. The vast majority of their work is done with federal dollars that are passed through down to the county, and they would be allowed to possibly strike as well. They would be subject to this as well. And those funds are always directed. They have to be placed against this, or they have to be placed against that. So we can't take federal money out of the federal budget dollars we receive and use it to pay for the collective bargaining. We have to take that out of locally generated revenues.
Wow.
So what that would mean is we wouldn't be able to cut human services functions. We have to cut it out of programs that are exclusively funded by local dollars. And when you talk about, if you go down the path of, we won't cut public safety, right? Well, then we could close our parks. But our entire parks budget in El Paso County is $7 million a year, and this is $25 million.
So close all the parks, and you don't
close
even
all the
get there.
parks, and that's not enough.
Yeah.
So you have to go to other places, and that means we have to cut road budget. That's the one thing remaining that is driven by locally derived taxes. And our a $25 million cut in our budget, if we were to place that completely against our road budget, that's about 70% of our entire road budget.
Wow.
So it would be a drastic decrease in fixing potholes, repaving roads. And in fact, we've got some statistics that would cause us to reduce our paving, it'd be one of these different choices. It's not all of them included, but that $25 million a year represents 82 miles of repaving, or it represents 225 miles of gravel repair, gravel road repair. It also could represent over $5 million in pothole repairs.
Wow. And
5 million pothole repairs, excuse me.
And rural Colorado, El Paso County included, we're struggling with our roads right now, even keeping up as is.
Yeah, that's right.
It wasn't that one of the number one complaints of people, I think 2 years ago, was the quality of our roads. And I know here in Pueblo it is. And that's gone.
Well, it would be gone if this bill were to be passed, and that's very, very difficult. And we just recently, have had a huge inflation increase, and the cost of road repairs, the materials for road repairs, has gone way up. So the El Paso County commissioners added an extra $10 million. We had to squeeze and scrimp and everything else. We put another $10 million into our road budget, and all of it got consumed by increased costs. So we're not actually adding to road repairs. We're paying for the increased inflation and the increased cost of things like tar and other materials. So we did that. If we hadn't have done that, we would have already been reducing from our what we were hoping to do. And this $25 million additional cost to that, it would be devastating for El Paso County.
Well, I think that answers the whole stakeholder question, right?
Yep.
If this actually had happened, I don't know that they would have been able to really justify even introducing this bill if the actual stakeholder process would have happened. So, Commissioner, thank you so much for being with us. I know you're on your way up to Denver to see the governor. I'm sure this will be one of the things that you'll be talking about with him. We appreciate all that you do for the communities, and especially in the Action 22 footprint. So thanks for being with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to your listeners. And we look forward to stopping this bill, and hopefully it will not pass through the legislature. But I can tell you that if it does pass through the legislature, I am asking the governor of Colorado to veto it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and that's on the record now. We appreciate that too.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, take care.
So our conversation now is with Bill Canda, who is County Commissioner for Custer County. And Custer County is one of our smaller counties. And so that means that two things. One, they don't have as big a voice as some of the other counties. And number two, the impact on them is is the same or greater. So anything that happens for these smaller communities happens in added measure. So Bill, thanks for sitting down and talking with us today. You got word yesterday, and it may have been me. I don't know. How did you find out that that this was going on?
Well, I'll tell you what, I could hear the scream all the way across the ocean. And it matters that much to me that I'm cutting part into my vacation for the Easter break here because it matters.
I appreciate that.
Impact. And you said, we are small, but we're mighty. And we're mighty mad too about this. And that it is an impact.
As well, you should be. So as county commissioner for Custer County, we have, would you just describe the size and what's going on over there?
Okay, so Custer County only has 4,500 citizens. Of that, we have about 3,000 voters roughly, but the citizens that vote are paying the bill for us to execute the services. Those services are executed by only 91 employees. That's what we have currently. The budget, our county budget is $4.5 million just for the budget for it. And the salaries to execute those services that are paid for are about 4.6. So we've got a $9.1 million actual dollars that the taxpayers put in the bill for. But we have an appetite for about $7 million more dollars because that we need in order to execute everything that is required, including the health and human services, those kinds of things, the airport, other things that we go after grants. So we share a lot of the cost with the state in grants and other services. So our total need is about $17 million. And last I heard, Sarah, the taxpayers have to vote on things, and we have a total transparent process by which we say we need a new courtroom, and we go to them and do you want to increase your tax base to get it? We need a new grader, those kinds of things. We look for grants to help augment that in order to get those things done. And we have to actually grade a road. If you started grading today and you ended up in Albuquerque with your graders, that's how many roads we have to maintain with that small workforce, just that one case.
So let me ask you, with the 91 in your workforce, are you the largest employer in Custer County?
Good question, and yes, we are. Well, we used to be the only employer in a lot of cases,
right?
But we are matched in some cases. But I'll tell you what we do. We are paying the highest minimum starting wage, because we care about our people, and we're starting off a minimum wage of about $17.50. So it's a couple bucks above the minimum. And then we try to keep a commensurate amount of money as people want to progress, because we want to keep our employees. We want to make a job so somebody will want to stay. And we have other issues like other counties do. We have housing shortages, cost of housing is too much. And so this is going to put another huge burden, and I can get into that here in a minute.
Yeah. So let me ask you before we get into that, because I do want to hear about that. What are the primary services that you do provide there in Custer County? Well, so roads, what else?
Bridges, of course, like all counties do. We have an airport as well, county airport that we have put together through the last 15 years is slowly growing. And the Colorado Transportation Department has helped us a bunch, the Aeronautics Division. There's grants that we've been after that, and plus private donations. Believe it or not, we've been lucky to get a lot of that. Public health is a big one. Pandemic really brought that to light, and we have, bar none, probably one of the best public health services here in this region today. So those kinds of services, health, we've got courts to maintain, the health and human services. We have the highest pop per capita of veterans in our county in the nation.
I was hoping you would talk. I was hoping that you would talk about that. So I want to repeat that, guys. In Custer County has the highest per capita in the nation for veterans.
That's right.
Highest per capita. So all of the, and you know it, you feel it when you're over there. So what would this cost? I know that you're on vacation. I know that you made some phone calls after I asked you yesterday. What is this going to cost your county?
Oh man, we did quick analysis with what we've got, and these are rough, but as accurate as we could be. And of that amount, the impact initially, just in our operating cost, would be an additional $182,000. Doesn't sound like a lot because we're a small county, but you add to that an additional $112,000, roughly to be an impact of about $250,000 to $300,000 just on the annual operating. The other amount that you'd add is the loss in productivity because of the other duties they would perform as if you did unionize and that kind of thing. And that doesn't include the cost to initially get to start the unionization. It would be about a $1.5 million cost to unionize to us. Where's that money coming from? So, and that's a double whammy too, because not only would it impact the citizens now, we'd either lose a service, reduce some workforce on the human resources side, could be in the courts support, could be in the road and bridge, could do it with less people, try to maintain it. And then on top of that, the state would have to share more with us because we're going to have more grants to make up the difference. So it's a double whammy, and that impacts not just the citizens of the county, but the citizens of the state as well.
You're the first one to bring up that point. I hadn't really thought about the shared burden with the state. We had talked a little bit about because of Tabor, and you hit on that, that there's no place else. You can't go into debt to cover this. You can't raise taxes to cover this. And raising taxes in Colorado is problematic, as well as should be, in my opinion. This is the opinion of Sarah, that it should be difficult to raise taxes in Colorado, but that hamstrings you in ways that exacerbates the issue for you.
It really does, and we can't afford to lose our younger population either. Our income, we are one of the few counties in the nation that are right to ranch is the use of the land. Anything above that, you have to have a permit to do. So in order to put a commercial business anywhere, you need a permit. So we've got agribusiness, tourism, and we've got some mining, still with some resources that we could do. But without that, and without having the people want to be able to live here and to work here and to have the services provided and make it possible for them to do, we need to be able to provide those services. And without it, our population would turn into a retirement population that has no recurring generational ability for a kid to graduate, go to college, and then come back and do a job here. If we don't perform the best we can and produce the more than just a service industry, we need to produce a product.
Right.
And we to be able to do that, we need people to do that. We can't run them off by running taxes up and making it hard to live here.
Correct. No, I agree with you. So one of the themes that with the other conversations that we've had today is the lack of stakeholder input in this. This would land on you as county commissioners. It would land on you starting, according to the language we've seen, land on you January 1st, 2023. So you'd have a few months to get this figured out, basically. What if any questions or stakeholder anything were you asked?
Not a darn thing. That's why I said that it was worth sitting down with you today, because what did they do? They're finalizing the language yesterday, and now we're going to hear a vote on it. Well, there's been no input from anybody that we've seen.
Yeah. So it's our understanding, if they introduce it, and it's 4/12 on a Friday afternoon. We were told yesterday that they were going to be introducing it today. That was the first time that anybody had seen the language. They kept it pretty close to the vest. A lot of your compadres and your colleagues from other counties were in Denver today. There was a press conference today. And So what we're hearing now, and I don't know how that's changed at all. I'm going to make some phone calls here in a few minutes, but it's there. It will be introduced today if it happens, and then they will have it in committee on Monday.
I don't understand how they can even think like that. It's just crazy because the impact is so significant. An unfunded mandate out of nowhere has a lot of unintended consequences. I don't know what that really means to us between now and January. How are we going to come up with $1.5 million just to start the process, and how are we going to cost out the wages to increase to our operating expenses that would be impacted by that? You can't do it. It's impossible. And so what does that mean? I'll tell you what it means to me. I work for the citizens of Custer County, and I work and pay taxes in the state, and we can't afford to have this happen without running it by the citizens. If this was the right thing to do across the state, why didn't they do it? Why didn't we hear about it? Why isn't the state putting this out and having it on the TV, on the radio stations, and telling us this is necessary because, by gosh, it's going to impact these poor workers on the county level, and they need more money.
I'll tell you,
problem with our employees. We have a great relationship with them. Don't want to break it. Don't want to lose it. This has to be defeated. It has to stop. It has to not pass. Period.
I'm so glad you said it that way. I was doing the mental rant and rave as I was driving home last night about this, and I had that same thought. And I was like, I can't prompt any of these guys to say this, but gosh, I hope somebody says, if this was such a great thing, then why are they waiting till the end? Why are they being shady about it? Why hasn't the stakeholder process gone on with those who would have to carry the burden?
Why on 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday is this now all of a sudden got to be passed on Monday at 3?
I wish I could answer that. I really do. But it goes back to who's actually being served here.
That's
so, and we need to recognize those who are serving.
And these little counties, guess what? Where's the food coming from for the state of Colorado? It's in the little counties, the rural counties, the farmers, the ranchers, the people who are producing the oil and gas that we should be producing. You can't impact it like this and have it to what end?
Yeah. So in the Action 22 footprint, and you know this because you sit on the Action 22 board, in the Action 22 footprint, we have the largest and the smallest counties, both geographically and by population. So Los Animas County is the biggest geographically. Pueblo or El Paso County is the largest by population. I think Custer is the smallest by geographically, and Mineral County is just right behind you in the smallest. They have just, I think that they have like 4,000. You have 4,500, they have 4,000. So this is, and so we've heard from both sides of this, size and not size, contributor to the state, help with the state, all of that. We're hoping that by having these conversations that, and we don't want to have to carry that, but this right here is a stakeholder process that didn't happen.
Yeah, it is. And it's great. Glad you're working hard, and it's important that Action 22 makes a big cry here. I hope the rest of these committees are doing the same thing, aren't they, Sarah? I hope so.
I'm sure that they are. I know that Club 20 and Pro 15 both are rallying to try to get this stopped. And so, I can say that they both said that, their committees or their boards have voted to oppose this. We, of course, this morning voted to adamantly oppose this in any form. And that's pretty strong language coming from us that we don't even want to consider. This board said that they don't even want to consider amendments or anything like that. That almost never happens with Action 22. We're always willing to find some consensus. Almost always, this is the first time in a long time. this board said, nope, there's no form of this that we're going to be okay with.
That's anything. And I've seen a lot of email traffic that has come over my computer, even on the beach out here in Hawaii.
We all feel real bad for you right now, Bill.
Yeah, well, I have to get out there. The surf is going to knock over my Mai Tai pretty soon. But anyway, a lot of commissioners are squealing. It's not just us.
That's right. That's right.
Too. They're all over the state. Weld County was.
And it's bipartisan too, is what we're hearing.
It is bipartisan.
Which says a lot on this. So,
got to be defeated, Sarah.
I know. Bill, get out there, enjoy that sun and sand a little bit for me, because I'm in Colorado where it's dry and windy. And so today, and we're getting ready to mix it up again. But I appreciate so much what you do for your community and how you serve, and for your service on the Action 22 board and your willingness to take some time out of your vacation. You didn't have to, and you shouldn't have to, but I appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you. And I wouldn't have missed it for $1 million. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Bill. Have a great vacation and a safe trip back.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.